Well, good morning. It is a Saturday morning. It's a beautiful morning here in central Oklahoma, and wanted to bring you in, give you an update on episode 13. Is that 31? Depends on if I flipped it or not. Well, what I wanted to do is kind of tell you where I am right now, but I wanted to spend more time on showing you the difference of if you choose to get an industrial engine versus getting a engine that you pull out of a Dodge pickup, and show you some of the things that you're going to have to expect and the trade-off that you get when you go with an industrial engine or marine engine versus pulling one off of a Dodge pickup truck. So I'm sitting here in front of the F350, the 2008 F350, and you see over my shoulder here we've got the engine pulled, got the whole bay open right here. One of the things that I'm going to show you the difference in also is the difference between whether you're getting a Cummins setup, and of course you know Cummins means Ford Cummins for you guys that are new to this, where we're putting a Cummins inside of a Ford, versus if you're just going to replace an engine that's in a Dodge. Now I'm not big on Dodge. Those of you that have seen me and been frustrated by me on some of the Facebook groups know that I'm kind of meticulous. I'm probably a little bit of a knucklehead when it comes to it. When you name a group Cummins something and then everything winds up being Dodge, it's one of my pet peeves. Cummins is the engine. It saved Dodge's butt, and they wouldn't have a truck division today if they weren't able to convince Cummins to do it. But that's the bottom line. If you'll notice the difference in the capacity inside underneath the bonnet, as they say in Britain, or underneath the hood here, you can pull this engine and still have the hood attached, still have the cab attached, and it's not that big a deal because it's a big engine compartment. Meanwhile, you take it over to a Dodge and you take a look at the Dodge, and the wheels are in, the fenders are in tighter, and to try to get everything in here, you'll see that there's just not a whole lot of room inside there. So when you go to a Cummins inside of a Ford, you're going to have lots of room to work with, you know, unless you're going to do things such as double turbos, twin set turbos. I'm basically trying to get a haul pig on here, as one of my friends on Cummins has said. I just want to haul my fifth wheel back and forth to South Texas, and that's all I want to do. Maybe take it out to the Albuquerque area, go to Canada or something like that. I just want it to be able to haul my 45-foot RV wherever I want it to go. I'm not going to get any competitions. This isn't even a four-wheel drive truck. And that's another thing you need to notice, is that since it's not a four-wheel drive truck, it's not jacked way up in the air. The cross member down here is easy to get around, and you get the right oil pan to go back onto it, it's easy to get back in there. All right, there's what it looks like inside, under the hood. Let's take a look at the engine. Okay, here we are taking a look at the 5.9 12 valve that I've put together here. You'll notice it still doesn't have the oil pan on it. Got the oil pan over there. I've waited 3 weeks to get that thing in here. First one that I had was the wrong size, and I did not discover it until I actually was putting the RTF on and matching it up to the holes, and it was the wrong size. It actually fits a 24 valve, and 24 valves a little bit wider, a little bit longer. And anyway, that's what it was made for, and I did not discover that until after I put RTF on it. So I'm going to have one for sale here in a couple of days for you to get. But let's take a look some of the differences. Let's discuss first of all the most important part about getting one of these, and the reason why I chose to get an industrial engine. I ordered this all the way out of Canada. It came out north of Calgary. Is where this thing comes. It used to be in a street sweeper, a Ford F700, 1996. Now, if you take a look at Ford F700, 1996. They have two models. One's almost a cab over, but the other one, the cab is set back a little bit, and that's what this one came out of. Now, this one, having come out of an industrial, had a lot of different connections on it. So I'm going to point out some of the things that you're going to have to look forward to, even though I've got this engine with only 64,000 miles on it. Only 64,000. And those are all in the city. It's all while it's working. So it's easy. Nothing's been really pushed on this engine. Well, let's show you some of these things that you're going to have to look forward to doing. You're going to have to change the fan hub. This fan hub on an industrial is down here on the crank. Because the F700, it sets way down deep into the frame, so the fan hub is down here. This harmonic balancer, the harmonic balancer was not the same. The harmonic balancer that this truck used did not have these timing marks in it. Each time that this metal ring goes around, the crank sensor senses it, and that's what we're going to hook up into our swap friendly swap helper, perhaps, to give the signal for the air conditioner and everything that the Ford F350 needs. But anyway, that's the first thing is you're going to have to get a fan hub. You have to get a harmonic balancer, and you have to get a harmonic balancer that has the timing marks that's in it. You also have to move the crank sensor from the bell housing. This one was hooked to a Allison AT45 transmission, which also the bell housing and the front mount all fit in here real tight, and so there's no room for any of this in it, so you're going to have to get that. The water pump is going to be the same. Yay! You don't have to change the water pump out, although I put a new water pump in here. While you're here, you're going to do it, right? So I put a new water pump in this one. Also, over here, the belt tensioner. You're going to have to change the belt tensioner, because if you're going to stay with the Ford F350, Mike Fuchs conversion bracket over here mounts it over here on the side of the bracket. Otherwise, you have to try to figure out how you're going to put it in here, and you have to use one of the bolts for the fan housing in here to be able to hook that to, and then your belts get all a different routing in here. And so everything that's up front has to be converted over to the Dodge type of setup here, so you can get it going, blended with Mike Fuchs conversion package over here, and it's the bracket here. This is the alternator here, the alternator that came out of that pickup truck. I'm also going to be able to put my air conditioner right down here in this area. You can't see it very well. Let me move this around so you kind of get a quick look, and then we'll show you. Okay. All right. With it painted black. All right, down in here in this area. Okay, here's the tensioner. There's your water pump. Here's Mike's adapter down here. And right here is where the AC is going to fit in the brackets right here. The bolts square in right there. Okay. All right. Let's go back up here. Okay, we're back. Now, since this thing was a industrial engine, the Ppump that was on here was, I mean, stock. It was stock. There was nothing in it that was helping it get any horsepower. They didn't need the horsepower. It was hydraulics driven. And so I've gone through this Ppump. In most of your industrial engines, you're going to have to go through the Ppump to try to get some more fuel into your truck. And so this one's been gone through. I followed the directions on it, and I'll put a link down here at the bottom. Follow the directions on the Tractor Whisperer. The Tractor Whisperer, the Bennett brothers in Arkansas. I followed their directions on here. You can find them on YouTube. Take a look at them. Also over here on the side, let's move around over on the side over here. Some of the things you're going to have to do to convert over is you're going to have to put your shutoff solenoid. The shutoff solenoid is not provided in this setup. Although there was one in there, it does not match this setup. And so the bracket in here was empty when I got this thing. And so you're going to have to get your own solenoids. Those ain't cheap. And I hear they burn out pretty quick. I may wind up getting a kill cable instead of it. We'll just see how it works out. I'm going to try it once or twice. Another thing you're going to need to do, you don't have to do it, down here, you'll notice I've got my power steering pump, hydraulic pump down here, and I do not have the typical Dodge vacuum pump over to the hydraulic power steering. I don't have that. I didn't want that. It's another piece of machinery to go wrong, and I don't want pieces of machinery hanging on this thing that's not needed. And if you guys are old timers like me and you don't want to redo your stuff over and over and over again, or get stranded on the side of the road, you're going to get rid of stuff you don't need. I'm going to show you a picture real quick right now of when I first got this engine. This engine had a huge compressor over here. The compressor is a Bendix. I've got it for sale. If you guys have an any of the big F700, 800, 880s, 8800s, any of those, this Bendix will work on. But I pulled it off, got rid of it. It used to sit right here. It operated right here like the Dodge vacuum pump did, only you had the compressor here, and then you had the power steering pump back behind it, just like the setup on the vacuum pump. You'll need to change that. Also, there are oil fill points. This oil fill point down here was I'll show you a picture of that real quick. Okay, this oil fill point down here, you got to delete it. So I've got a freeze plug down in there, and this is around the motor mounts. When this industrial engine was mounted with the big bell housing for the Allison transmission, you didn't need this motor mount spot. But you need the motor mount spot now because you're getting ready to put it in this truck. Also, you're going to have to move the dipstick. See the dipstick here? You're going to move the dipstick from this point to this point. It's not a big deal. But trying to find this dipstick right here, I'm going to put a link down here, if I can find it, of a Mr. Gasket dipstick housing that fits perfectly in here. And all you have to do to this is just seal it down here at the bottom. It fits perfectly down in there with a little bit of tension, and that's what you want. Then you come out with it. Let me show you this. Then you come out with it here. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, there you go. All right, you come out with it, and this little bracket is with the Mr. Gasket thing. This is not going to be used, and so I just found a bolt that would fit in there, put a nut on one side of it, nut on the other side of it, and with a nut on one side and one on the other, froze it right there in that position. That's solid as a rock right there, sealed down there at the bottom. So you got you an oil dipstick, and the fuel lines are going to be coming up through here, right here, and then you see the main line right up here that is going into the filter over to the Ppump here. So the only thing I'm going to have to dodge with this is this right here. This right here is something you don't get on your Dodge pickup trucks. This is a crankcase vent. In fact, I can pull that off right now. All right, not. You don't get that vent on a regular Dodge. But I have a vent hose that's going to come down, and so the vent hose is going to be on the inside of the fuel line. The fuel line is going to come up around the back side of the dipstick, and it will stay there, and then I'll be able to pull it. Yeah, understanding that this is the back of the engine, I understand it's going to be way at the back, but you still should be able to reach it. No big deal. Okay, let's come over here to the side of the engine. I got better light over here, show you a couple of things that you're going to want to know about. Okay, guys, here is the side of the engine. One of the modifications you're going to have to do to this is going to be the heater line. Now, the heater line that was originally in this truck was dependent on hooking into one of these lines up here, but because of the Cummins situation, I'm not going to be able to make it happen. And so you see, this is where it used to be on that F700. So I just made it a little bit smaller, and it's going to be on the passenger side of the Ford. Here's where it goes in, and here's where it comes out. And we're going to go in with that little fitting that I just showed you, and come out. We're going to put a fitting to where it can go back in to the situation, probably on top of the radiator. There's not a whole lot that changes over here on the turbo side of it. You'll notice that the turbo fuel recovery, it goes where the original F700 went. But here's Mike Fuchs's his adapter for me, and the adapter here, you see your alternator bolts straight in. The AC is going to bolt straight in. The AC is over there. You see it up on the hood right there. There it is. The compressor's down there. Okay. All right. So there's not a whole lot that's going to have to change on this side of it. I did put new nozzles in each one of the injectors. I pulled all the injectors out and put new nozzles in there. One of the things that I did on the back side of this engine that I want you to be aware of, and this is not a difference as far as industrial versus regular, is you notice this big freeze plug I have back here. I put that in because this thing gets a lot of pressure when you high rev it, and I've got this thing set up to go to 3,000 to 4,000 RPMs. And so going up that high, this will get a lot of pressure on it, and number 6 valve tends to get a little bit hot. I may later bore this, tap it, and put a bypass that will go up over here and hook in right there. There's an empty hole, and hook in right there, and then that'll supply a little extra circulation back there in the back. All right, now the last thing I want to talk about. Guys, is the sensors. Now remember, when you're doing a Cummins, forward over to Cummins, you've got to be able to use the ECM of the Ford. And so your sensors have to talk the same language as your Ford. So you're going to have to convert all these sensors. There's basically 6 sensors that you're going to have to do. And you'll notice that I have them all marked off, and I've already got all the adapters to them. And you're going to have to find these adapters at hardware stores. You're going to have to make several trips, but I finally got it done. Here's a look at them. All right here, this is the oil pressure. It's on top of where the oil filter is going to be. Took a adapter here, and then this didn't quite fit as far as the threads, and so I put extra tape on that thing, and it got it to come down pretty tight. And so I don't think that's going to leak. I think it's going to be just fine. So there's oil pressure sensor. Over here, here's oil temperature. Now, those of you that know these setups know that that's not an oil point. That is a coolant point. Randy Gillum, who is the man who is programming my tune on this, says all he needs is it for it to read, so he can tune it in. and the oil pressure, the oil temperature is not that big of a deal, but it has to read, and he has to use it for his tuning. Here's another one. This one was one of the hardest ones to do. This is the coolant temperature. You notice it is right down here in the same cavity in which the pump is. This is before the thermostat. Thermostat's right in here. It is pre-thermostat temperature, okay? It's not gonna be the thermostat afterwards. So it's gonna tell you the temperature before that thermostat hits 190 degrees. And that's really where you want it. You don't want it up here in this spot because that's post thermostat, and you're going to see your temperature do a lot of spiking if you put it up there, because when that thermostat starts to open, it's going to have that very cool side of the radiator pump fluid through there. Your temperature is going to see drop down to 180. And then it'll start coming back up, and the thermostat will drop off, and you're just going to see a lot of fluctuation in there whenever you're using that one on that side of it. So use it pre-thermostat. All right, let's move around to another one of our sensors. The manifold absolute pressure. Had two options of where to put this thing, but because this right here, there's a lot of this size adapters at the hardware store. I went with it here instead of back here. You see there's a bolt right there that I could have pulled out and used, but I just chose to go down here, and that's the manifold absolute pressure. It's also going to be a little bit more accurate when it's down here. But this is the Ford, it came out of the Ford engine, the 6.4, found an adapter and put it in here, and used a lot of Teflon tape and got it in there nice and solid. We just don't want to knock it off when we're putting the engine in. All right. Finally, let's go over here and take a look at one of the others that you have to have. That you just saw the map. Now the MAF, M-A-F, the airflow sensor. Airflow sensor on this is going to be on the cold air intake. Here it is. That is the Ford intake right there. It actually is an AFE intake, but it's going to be able to plumb in right easy with just maybe one hose change. But there's the MAF, the mass airflow sensor. Okay, well that's it for now, guys. Hopefully by the end of this Saturday, I've not only got the oil pan done, but I also will have this done. Look what's on the floor down here. Whenever you're going to do a Cummins and you have an 5R110 transmission like this, you're going to have to move that transmission back. You have to move it back. There's 3 holes in there, and when you have the 6.4 diesel in there, they're in the front 2 holes for the cross member. And when you're going to put a Cummins in there, in order for the mechanical fan to fit, you have to move it to the back 2 holes. And the measurement from center to center of those holes is 2.58. But I'll put the number down here so you can see it. See it here? 2.58 inches. You can convert that into millimeters or whatever when you take it to the machine shop. Okay, guys, that's it. I appreciate it. You guys have a good one, and hopefully you'll be back and be able to join the group. Get in our group over on Facebook. It's called the Ford Chevy Swap Video group. Also over on YouTube, make sure and subscribe down here, hit the bell, put a thumbs up. We'll see you guys next time.